Okay.
Nothing's happening.
Wait a few minutes for people to come in.
Okay, we are in the webinar. Yeah, we got about 7-8 people, Jackie.
He's coming.
Just see in the attendees list, you can see.
Yeah.
You can welcome them.
Oh, that's it. Glenn's back. Okay, Glenn, we're just waiting for people to pop in. It's still counting.
I got about 9 people coming.
I got 13.
Oh, okay, including us. Okay.
It's just slowly going up. Okay. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to our 5th Rocket Work webinar. We had to swap. If you were expecting to see Dr. Bashak doing attribute-based pricing, sorry. COVID interrupted as always. And so we swapped our session from 2 weeks forward. Thanks to Ivy for being flexible and swapping with us. And then Bashak and attribute-based pricing will be in 2 weeks, that session. It's a great session, so don't miss it. I keep saying that, so now I get another week to say it. Okay, so we'll get started. We'll start with Glenn, who's going to just give you an update on HSMAI. We've got some new things happening and new events coming up, which is exciting. And then he'll hand over to Ivy and we'll talk about data. Over to you, Glenn.
Yeah, you need to unmute yourself, Glenn. Glenn, you need to unmute yourself.
We can't hear you, Glenn. Glenn.
Hello.
Oh dear.
Glenn, you need to unmute. Hello.
Oh, he knows it. Okay.
Okay. Maybe you can talk about this. Now we can hear you.
Okay, now? Okay, all right.
Gotcha.
All right, okay, so welcome to our 5th Rocket Work webinar. And we'll go through a little bit of an introduction about HSMAI and what's happening in the near future first. But the feature of today's session is using consumer data to drive decisions. And we'll have the very talented Ivy Esquero from Hilton Asia Pacific. She works as a Director of Planning, Strategy and Insight, and she'll run us through a very interesting and not too overly data-laden presentation. So I guess the first thing we want to address is what is ROC? So ROC is HSMAI's Revenue Optimization Conference. Basically, it's a conference that runs across 5 continents annually. And this year, it kicked off in Singapore on the 9th to 10th of June. We all came together in Singapore, and then it rolled to the Americas, Europe, Brazil, and then it will come up in November 28th to 29th in the Middle East in Dubai. So if you are planning on heading to the Middle East around that time, you have one chance to join the conference live. Now, basically, in ROC in Singapore, we all came together. There was about 150 delegates across, leaders in the commercial space, as well as obviously associates and people from the hotel industry. And it was one of the first times that we all came together after more than 2 years. And so, as Jackie said, it was a very exciting conference, and I think everyone really enjoyed exchanging ideas. But one of the things that really came up in the conference was there were so many new innovations, and there was a lot of exciting new concepts in the field of hotels and commercial management. So originally, post the conference, we always planned to do a virtual event, a one-day virtual event. But we thought it would just, it wouldn't get much traction because everyone would have to come out of the office for a full day. So what we decided is to run 6 webinar sessions, just basically 1 hour bite-sized lunchtime session. And so Rock at Work was born, the webinar series, of which we are now, obviously with Ivy, we're in the 5th session. So if we run through what you can access online through Hey Summit, which is the platform that you would have dialed into this this webinar. We've had 4 already. So we covered the APAC tourism economic update. We had post-pandemic mindset. We had role of digital marketing through the customer journey. And of course, the very interesting metaverse with Dr. Detlev. If anyone caught that last week, was really interesting. And obviously, we've just had a switch around with this week with Ivy coming to do it today. And in 2 weeks' time, we'll have attribute-based pricing, which is going to be another very interesting session. And after that, we also have from Singapore, we also had 3 masterclasses, and we're going to run those online too. And we'll go into more of that a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, so who is HSMAI? For those of you that don't know, we're the hospital. It's a long acronym. I mean, it's a long word, so that's why it's an acronym. We're the Hospitality Sales and Marketing Association International. And basically, we're a professional body of, we're a professional organization for individuals. So we basically, we start from the entry level and we go right up to senior leadership. So you can get ready for the hospitality industry, you can upskill, you can get certified, and also you can join master classes and insightful events. So basically it's a membership association where you can, as a member of the hotel industry, you can learn more about it in the industry and get help from us as an association. So that, as I said, from the membership benefits, we have industry discipline specific education. We always impart marketing intelligence. We continually doing interesting industry events. And you can, as we mentioned, get certified through a number of different courses. Okay, coming up, we have first off, we have the masterclasses. So in September, we're going to have a total revenue forecasting masterclass. Again, this is from Rock Singapore. Then we'll have a building a commercial acumen, and then using content to maximize your marketing efforts. So if you want to have a look at those masterclasses and join, you can just go to hsmaiasia.org/events, and you can find out all the information you need and how to join there. Okay, and the most exciting event we've coming up, the next in-person event is going to be the Digital Marketing Conference. That's going to be held in beautiful Phuket on the 13th to the 15th of September. And this is going to cover all the latest, how to digital sell, and maximize your online revenues. And it'll consist of a half-day forum on the 13th, which will cover, we've got a really exciting agenda for the half day. And then it will go into 2 days of full hands-on workshop style classes, where you can get certified with those classes and come away with actionable plans to implement as soon as you get back to your hotel. So we look forward to seeing you at that. And of course, you get to get away to Phuket at the same time. Right, in terms of webinars, we've got the sourcing trends on the future of MICE. As you can see, that's going to be another series, and that's going across India, Japan, Hong Kong, China, and Southeast Asia. So if you're in the MICE sector, then obviously this is going to be really beneficial for you to join and learn more about what the future of sourcing your business is going to be. Okay, and India, where, as Jackie mentioned, Sonia has joined us, the Managing Director from India, and tomorrow she'll have her Power Up Breakfast. So good luck, Sonia, with that. And then we'll also have a 2-day revenue training workshop in October and November. And of course, one of the key attributes of HSMAI is obviously revenue. We're built around revenue management, marketing, and sales. And if you're new to revenue and you've got less than 3 years experience, you can get certified with an official recognized certificate in revenue management. So again, if you visit our HSMAI Academy website, you can learn more about how to enroll and more about the course there. Now, back to today's webinar. So I can see we're ready to move on. If you have a question, please don't raise your hand. You don't need to. You just type your question in the Q&A section, and all of us in the panel, including Ivy, the speaker, that we'll all see your question. And once we get to question time, we can start moving through that. So to introduce someone a little bit more nice to look at than me is it's over to you, Ivy, and we're really looking forward to hearing your presentation on what we do with our consumer data to get more effective marketing campaigns out to market.
Thanks, Glenn, and thanks everybody for joining. So I'm going to share my screen and walk you through today's presentation. And thanks for joining me today. My name is Ivy Esquero, and as Glenn mentioned, I head up the Insights Planning and Strategy team for marketing and loyalty for Hilton and Asia Pacific. So my team is responsible for audience and brand strategy, as well as analytics and measurement for our activities across APAC markets. That's including, key markets like China, Japan, Southeast Asia, Australasia, and India. So today, what I wanted to do was really share some data-led approaches that we have been using to get a better understanding of our customers' preferences and buying behavior. And how we're using those insights is really to help us support brand strategy, pricing recommendations, and even message development for marketing. So what I'll do today is really share some case studies and examples of use cases to hopefully spark some ideas and discussion amongst this group. So we have about 30 minutes for the presentation, give or take a few minutes. So there's plenty of time for questions at the end. But I'm also happy to connect and answer any questions you may have post presentation. And feel free to LinkedIn me. And I'd love to hear your own stories about data and data mining. So with that, let's dive right in. I think hospitality is really, really good at listening to the customer, right? Typically, when we think about how we listen to the customer, the tools that we're often using are things like customer satisfaction studies and surveys that you get from, post stay at the hotel. I'm sure some of your teams are oftentimes talking to stayers and customers themselves, and even, getting feedback from your frontline team members, who are in customer service to understand any direct customer feedback. Whoops. People still seeing my screen?
Yes.
Great. So, more than ever though, brands now have access to even more data and customer feedback from digital sources. But oftentimes those initial sources of customer feedback and these new sources of customer feedback are not really fully integrated in the way that we make decisions about product or even the way that we make decisions about pricing or packaging. So online reviews, for instance, are often used a lot for problem resolution and customer service, or even understanding the satisfaction levels at hotels. But today, what I'll do is I'll share an example of how we've started to really mine online reviews to better understand customer preferences for things like marketing, but also for understanding program benefits and how we can start to think about packaging offers for customers. Similarly, social listening is something that's often used by PR teams for crisis resolution and for tracking. But again, it's not something that brands often use beyond PR or marketing. So what I'll do is share some interesting developments and use cases for hospitality that potentially can drive some better insights. And lastly, I'll briefly touch on B2B and share some similar tactics and how to qualitatively use some B2B channels to map out customer journeys, because I think there's also something to using digital channels for B2B, especially for some of you who are dealing with developers or owners in your discussions. So let's dive right in, shall we? So the first section that I'll talk about is really taking a deeper look at customer reviews. So the example that that I'm going to talk about is a project that we started in China in late 2019. And it started off as a way to understand the booking journey for customers. So what we did was we looked at over 800,000 reviews across, hotel reviews, OTAs, OTA reviews, and even app reviews. And what we did was we clustered all of those reviews together, started looking at themes that came out, and then taking a look more qualitatively and taking a cultural lens to understand that we got the context right. And what was interesting about this project was, while it started off as a way to understand booking preferences and booking experience, we were actually able to mine that data for a wider variety of use cases. So if you look at the number of views related to booking, that's 7%, understandably much fewer than stay reviews. There was enough volume there that 7%, once we cleaned it up, represented about 50,000 reviews, right? So we were able to really understand and go deeper into substantive feedback and, take away a lot of the noise, and also try to understand what was happening around booking and customer behavior. So what we found was there were actually 10 themes that were related to booking. But what was interesting was when we started to analyze the rest of the stay data, we found that there were actually similar themes that were driving stay satisfaction as well. So some few outcomes was that was really great was we initially found that it gave some great insights into how customer expectations were changing over the course of the consumer journey, from pre-booking to post-stay, and what were those things that were changing and what were those things that were consistent. So additionally, because there were some great, a great number of reviews to work with, we were able to really go deeper into sub-themes that gave us more context into the broader theme, and also gave us more ideas on the types of experiences and products that could potentially meet customer needs. So just to quickly touch on it, the themes that came out being very, very important, both for booking and for stay, were three things. So warm service, which is all about, how people feel about, and treated during and before the stay, even before the stay, all about the room, and then all about how to get to the hotel, right? So, it was interesting was, as you looked across different customer segments and also across different city tiers in China, you were able to actually identify what things were most important even within those particular areas. So another important output for us was we were able to understand how these themes changed over time. So for some platforms, we were able to actually go back up to 3 years, and this allowed us to change and track patterns for each team. So we were able to see, what was consistent and what is actually starting to grow in importance. And it also allowed us to understand, what are some themes that were more resonant across, particular consumer segments. And then the last thing that was important was it was also really helpful to understand themes that were growing, but the ones that have some potential to grow. So it allowed us to prioritize and focus on things that potentially had room to really drive one better potential upsell opportunity, and also where people are more willing to spend for particular services and kind of offerings. So another thing that was really interesting about being able to group things together was we were able to really identify different areas of opportunity. So one, it highlighted the need to really understand what are the minimum expectations and the must-win themes that we need to deliver to make sure that we were really meeting our customers where they want. So, those 3 themes that I mentioned before, those themes belong in that must-win category. But there were also particular themes that we identified that were disruptive or innovative. So booking experience is one, that was not heavily discussed, but rather than ignoring this theme, we're able to really try to understand, is there some possibility to proactively change expectations? So how do we start to really amplify some of those, some of the ways that we're changing that experience, but also how do we make sure that we're removing friction in those areas? But the one theme that for me was really interesting was where this area where there are some, they're low priority for guests right now, but when they actually show up, they provide lots of opportunities to over deliver and drive guest love. So, how do we champion these areas? How do we make sure that we are looking to over deliver on those? Because that really is a connection to better engagement, and it's really something that differentiates Hilton from our competitors, right? So, an example of this was when we were, looking into some additional program benefits for customers. We looked at the results of this exercise to get at whether this program benefit was going to work or was going to have a good outcome. So I don't know if some of you are Hilton Honors members, but we introduced automated upgrades, for instance, and automated upgrades are all about instant gratification, right? So 72 hours before your stay, you're able to get an email that says you've been automatically upgraded. And what that does, and what this research helped us to identify, is that it helps build anticipation for the customer, and it builds a reinforcement of the value of Hilton Honors Elite membership. So, really using some insights from this, we were able to make the case that this was something that consumers really value. So, also, I think the last thing on this, just to reiterate how useful it was to pivot quickly, as I mentioned, we started this in 2019, and when COVID started, we were able to really, take a look at the benchmarks that we had seen to understand, what was going to be changing from a consumer expectation point of view. So, in early 2020, for instance, we identified through this research that there were three things that were going to become really, really important for customer. One, cancellation flexibility was going to be something that was going to be more important, because we saw that it was already something that was growing in importance before. So we really doubled down on being flexible for guests. Another thing is around cleanliness. So cleanliness was a big topic that really drove loyalty prior. And so we saw that interest and that need to focus on cleanliness was something that we needed to own. So we introduced Clean Stay at the very early parts of the pandemic, and really helped us reassure and give some assurance and trust to our customers that we were there for them early on. And then finally, this F&B focus. So we saw that there was lots of interest already in F&B, and so pivoting quickly, we knew that we needed to think about how we made in-room dining something that was still available to guests, even through things like lockdowns and quarantines. So these were just some things that we were able to extract from the data, even though, as I mentioned, we had a very narrow use case in the beginning. So what does this mean from a pricing and a product perspective? I think there's some applications that are, that are really, tied to revenue and how we drive more revenue and drive more brand love. First is around, offers and bundling. So through this kind of analysis, I think we can really quickly understand, how are particular packages or attributes seen by consumers, and how can we use that to protect revenue, right? How can we make sure that the things that people are willing to pay for, we are not discounting. The things that people are willing to pay for, we are connecting to the value proposition for our brands. Second thing is understanding, segmentation. So how do we offer the right things to the right audiences, and do that in a way that, across markets that they value. And then finally, prioritization. Again, I mentioned there are some things that are they're important as table stakes, but there are also some things that are important from a differentiation and innovation perspective. So how do you prioritize your activities and your messages to drive different key KPIs across the business? So I think that really covers how we've been using customer reviews. But in these next few sections, I'll just quickly touch on a few other areas that I think data has really helped or can really help in driving some decisions. So the second area is around social listening. So I know, as I mentioned, a lot of people use this for PR and marketing, but there are some really great use cases, even in the moment that our teams in corporate, but also at hotel level, can use to really quickly get a sense for how consumers are thinking and how we can use that to make broader decisions. So most of you probably have some sort of monitoring in place somewhere in the company. So some things that are often used for social listening are looking at brand associations. How can we look at how our brand is doing over time, and how are we being connected to themes, and how can we look at emerging conversations in real time? We can also use social listening to monitor our business units and our competitors by market. We can look at individual topics or channels to help define the issues that are hitting not just us, but maybe the wider industry or the market, right? So an example of this right now is, how recession conversations are hitting consumers. So how do we better understand whether that's actually having an impact on our business? The third one is around, market resonance and impact. So, are there particular areas where our potential messages or our potential product launches are resonating or not resonating, and how can we use people's responses to understand how we can optimize those communications? And then finally, I think something that people have just started to use it for is really around tracking influencers. This is particularly important for travel because I think oftentimes a lot of the word of mouth conversations that happens around travel is tied to influencers. And how do we monitor key influencers, not just the ones that are paid, but the ones that are actually driving impact, the ones that are actually driving micro communities and actually driving decisions for some key segments that are important to the business. But other than these, there's a lot of other interesting use cases. But I wanted to touch just on some new developments, or at least some capabilities that are starting to get more common on some social listening platform. And even if you're doing a hack, I can share a little bit about how you can hack and look at social listening in a different way, even if you don't have a social monitoring platform, right? So one thing that I think brands should pay more attention to is starting to look at virality. So what are some conversations that are starting to gain traction? What are things that are being shared across different channels, and not just something kind of that are one-off, right? I think having a look at what themes are sustaining, what are ones that are shareable, who is driving them, and even what conversations cause spikes, and what conversations cause more deeper engagement that actually sustain. These are things that help supplement and really help enhance the insights that you're getting from more traditional tracking sources. So, while some social listening platforms have this embedded, a much more manual way of doing it is really by tracking some of those influencers that I mentioned before, and understanding how they're sharing across different platforms and seeing how long or how short those conversations are going. What I've found is that, looking at virality, looking at lasting impact can really help give you some context in terms of, whether or not you keep an offer out in the marketplace, for instance, whether or not something is worth, again, sticking your flag in the sand and saying that you're not going to discount. So these are potentially helpful things that really, from a practical level, help you in some of the pricing and the packaging decisions that you're making, for the business. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on social listening for offer research and validation. So I think, there's so much rich content, particularly in Asia Pacific, and people are very, very open and willing to share content and, share about their travel. But we don't often look to the social listening landscape for inspiration, right? So this is a great example. If you look at social listening at the consumer landscape, it's very, very quick to see how potential markets can be nuanced. So for instance, for F&B, you look at, Hong Kong versus Singapore, you see that Hong Kong is all about pampering yourselves, indulging, whereas in Singapore, it's a lot more about luxe and authority. So by looking at, social listening and themes in the market, you can start to really develop a view of consumer expectations and how they behave, and you can nuance your approach to packaging and program benefits, or even marketing messages that you go out with. So again, some quick highlights about some industry applications and a few to think about. So similar to the analysis and reviews, and how do we start to group these themes to start to look at how conversations are changing in real time and actually catching trends as they happen. So you can have a real-time read on what trends are impacting travel conversations and consumer behavior. Secondly, we can also look at activity in the sector, but even look beyond the travel sector at associated industries, like F&B is a really good one, to see if there are themes that are connected across. So this helps with identifying potential content that you may want to deploy, but even at a broader strategic level, maybe even identifying partnerships or looking at product enhancements. And then finally, even a quick scan of the landscape can often give you a very good understanding of market nuances as they happen, particularly for trending topics. I mentioned inflation already and price concerns, but it's also things like the revenge travel that is still hitting our markets, right? So those are things that I think are nuanced very well by social listening data. So I know that was a lot. I promise the last section will be very, very quick. I just wanted to just briefly touch on B2B, because I think some of you may be touching developer, GM, consumer, B2B communities as well. And really what I just wanted to mention here is the same approach actually works if you use B2B sources, right? How can you start to think about digital sources to supplement some of the work that you're doing, talking to developers, talking to owners, talking to GMs, to understand, what is happening in the markets and what is happening in the category. So, this is just an example, but this is a quick case study in how you can use, LinkedIn, for instance, and digital data to enhance and give you a richer view of a category. So, some of the things that you can do with social data, LinkedIn, digital blog data, is you can actually create personas. You can create customer journey maps. You can create opportunity maps using a mix of social listening, some qualitative data, and even some data from LinkedIn. So by using this approach, you can start to develop some richer maps of your customer, which sometimes can be a bit of a challenge for B2B. It's an expensive audience to talk to, but using this hacked approach, you can understand, your target audience's concerns, why they may be reacting in certain ways, and gain an insight in how they make decisions. And also by incorporating these additional views, there's also some potential to develop some great ideas around the content, the experience, and the unmet needs that they have as they're interacting with you. And then the last thing is, I think it's also a great way to understand what your brand story is from a B2B perspective, and how do you connect that with the consumer story to drive better connection and better relevance to the broader corporate story. So I just wanted to leave you with just a few quick lessons learned and some things to remember. I know it was a lot to discuss, but I really appreciate you taking the time to learn about this, but also to have some discussions. But before I close, I just wanted to share, just some broad learnings around data and how we extract it, and move this forward, right? So the first thing is around being platform agnostic. So I urge you to, not wait until you have the right tool or the right platform. The tool doesn't actually matter. I think the thinking is what matters. It's the framework that matters. And how do you start making making decisions by starting to incorporate some of these other sources of data into your product or into your pricing strategy. So how people use a tool is more important than the capabilities. So a basic tool that's used well is probably better than a bells and whistles kind of platform that isn't set up properly and it's so hard to navigate that you can't extract insights from it, right? The second thing is around, really think about how you connect to some of these more traditional sources of customer satisfaction. We have so much data at our fingertips as an industry, but oftentimes what I'm seeing is we use it for understanding the star rating, understanding the reviews. We don't actually go deep into what those reviews actually say. And there's a lot of feedback and insights that we can get that provide us with some really great contextual information, but also deeper understanding of how our customers behave. And then the last thing is this is a very iterative process. Don't think about it as not as one and done. It's something that needs to live in order to pay dividends. So keep interrogating, keep updating to make it more relevant over time. So, just as a last example, I was mentioning to Jackie before we started that, that approach that I mentioned in that first case study, we've used that similar approach now to across more markets, right? So in Japan, Australia, we use that same framework, that same thinking to think about loyalty. So what does loyalty actually mean? And how do we drive, people up the tiers, and how do we drive more brand love? And similarly, I think we're finding some great insights around, customer segments who are more likely to be loyal, how, what kinds of benefits, really drive consumer connection. So it's something that's really powerful once you start to really incorporate it. So with that, I'm probably going to hand it back over to Jackie and Glenn to see if there are any questions. But I encourage you, like I mentioned, I'd love to hear stories from the group as well, and I'd love to keep this conversation going.
Thank you, Ivy. I was thinking maybe we could leave that your last slide up, but because it was a really nice, I think it was a good succinct slide to talk to. I mean, one thing, this is about the third or fourth time I've seen this presentation, and I learn something new every time. So thank you for that. And it's all, it's just really, I mean, it makes me think in the back of my mind how lucky Hilton is to have you, because it really is. And now these days, if you can use data in the way that you're presenting, you're really using it to guide you to the most opportunity, right? At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's being prepared and finding that opportunity and then executing. So using data to do that. But I believe Jackie, our president, had a question. I saw her earlier with a question, and feel free to, if you have a question out there, to use the Q&A function, and we can quiz Ivy while we absorb and download everything we just learned from her. Jackie?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I was wondering, I think we talked about before is where you've brought all your data into one data platform. How did that come about? Like, how does that project start, and who needs to be involved to get all the data into the right place so that you can drive these insights pretty quickly?
Yeah, and I don't think that you have to wait until it's all connected, right? I think like what I started off by saying, and what's nice about using this kind of framework or this kind of thinking is you can start small. I think you can start with one platform. You know, if you're more B2B, take a look at B2B platforms like LinkedIn. If you're more consumer, even taking a look at, you know, your followers. Like if you're a hotel GM, for instance, looking at how people are interacting with you on, you know, on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, even just looking at those conversations without needing to have a platform can already be instructive. But to me, you know, it always takes time, particularly for a big company like Hilton. So, you know, it doesn't start off with everything at once. It always starts off with a small project, right? So for us, the project was, let's take a look at this slice of consumer reviews that's just about booking. And so that's how it always starts. And once you, I think, show the value, oh, you know, I saw that this theme connected with something else that we're seeing from our CSAT platform, that's when it starts to get powerful, I think. And that's when you start to really integrate and connect. And when you start to see multiple data sources kind of confirming some of the trends, then, you know, it becomes a much more powerful story that you can take to you know, your senior leadership to drive some you know, some key decisions. So so to me, it's not that you have to find the platform first, or you know, kind of rally everybody first. I actually think it starts with smaller projects that show the value of how you can use data better, and that's how you start to gain traction, right? You start to see people, you present, they say, oh, that's interesting, I see something similar here, why don't we connect our data together? And I think that's where some of those bigger, broader applications come about.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was wondering that if it started with some insights and then you worked out how to sort of automate it and bring them in so that you could mine them more often or not. Yeah. And then I guess one of the other things I was wondering is when you started on this project, like who was involved? Like how many do you bring? What different roles were you bringing in to make this all happen?
Yeah, it really started with marketing, right? So we sit in the marketing team, but being the customer insights champion, I think you always have connections to product. You have, you know, which is brand. You also have connections to revenue, obviously, because they're very interested in how consumers are thinking. But also we have a really great data analytics team at Hilton who also, you know, look at consumer behavior on our platform. So it's a group of people who are, I think, really focused on the consumer. So consumer champions, you know, consumer focused, and those are the people that I think really help enhance the insights and the findings from some of these projects.
Yeah, that's interesting because yeah, you explained it well, because you made me realize that, you know, that you actually could start doing some of this stuff with just the GM and maybe the marketing person on property.
Marcoms, yeah, exactly.
Marcoms or something like that. You could actually get started. And you gave me another idea, because I've been working on all the topics for the 2-day workshop that we're doing in Phuket in September. And he gave me the idea we were going to talk about packaging. I thought, oh, that's a great idea. You could go to your reviews and really be reading your reviews and looking at, you know, what were your guests doing? What did they have fun doing? You know, and working out what things you package together with outside partners and things like that.
Yeah, and you don't need a very powerful.
You can now pass on to everybody as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you don't need a very powerful text analytics platform, right? Like I think, you know, if your Marcoms person, even your customer service person, if you have somebody like that, they're actually really, you know, they're on top of the reviews a lot of the times, and they have some insights. They've been tracking, they understand what's happening, and you know, talk to those people once in a while. I think they have a lot of insight in terms of what's resonant with customers. And another thing, I think, you know, people don't often use this, but, you know, you don't need bespoke analysis, you know, at a top line level. You know, when you look at, you know, things like Google reviews, for instance, right, or even Expedia or TripAdvisor, you'll see, like, what are the things that people say are great about this particular hotel, or say that are, you know, that they really love. Like, those are things that are already there for you. So review those, take a look at those, understand to see if you can incorporate them into, again, the packages and the experiences that you're highlighting for your hotel. I think that's really, really powerful, and data led. So to encourage, there's tons of really great free insights that you get already just from scanning those reviews.
Yeah, that's really.
I guess what you're saying, Ivy, is you don't have to be highly. I mean, the end goal might be keep going further and further into the analytics, but it can start quite simple by finding 15 influencers in your area or around that have, and then just listen and looking at their comments from their crowds and looking at what people loved about certain hotels and going, okay, I get it now. They really liked this F&B experience, so we should consider implementing something similar. It can start quite simple, really, and the information these days is quite accessible, right? So on whether it's influencers on the social channels or, like you said, in LinkedIn or Facebook groups, it's quite easy to find basic information and feedback and then sort of group it together if you want to start very simple and just start incorporating data-led decisions. Yeah,
that's right. No, that's exactly right, Glenn. And again, once you follow one person, there's usually a recommendation for another person, right? You can start off one, and all of a sudden you have a group of people that you're following who are also driving those conversations. So it's just about knowing, particularly if you're at a hotel, knowing who are those people who are driving conversations about your hotel. I think that is the most powerful thing. And then really following and understanding what, like how they talk about, the benefits or the amenities, or how they talk about destinations. I think there's a lot of value to learning from people who know how to inspire people to book, or how to inspire people to get to a destination, right? I think it's we talk a lot about big data, but there's value in also looking and qualitatively understanding, your category or your sort of the influencers that are driving conversations. Absolutely.
Some of those conversations sorry, Sonia.
No, go ahead. We just had a question from someone in the audience.
Yes, sure. Sonia, okay, yes.
Okay, so Trev is asking that I'm really keen to hear how Hilton is preparing for the cookieless world. The loss of this data is huge, not only across travel, but also across the web. So how is Hilton preparing to navigate this new world?
That's a big one.
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question. I think everybody in marketing is grappling with the same problem, and I think our solution is exactly the same, right? Is as everybody else, and it's the only solution, which is, how do we make sure that our customers want to engage directly with us, and how do we make sure that they, again, are coming to us directly, so that we understand more of what they're saying. So part of that is definitely working on our customer data ourselves, our primary customer data platform, and making sure that that's ready for that cookieless world. But part of it too is making sure that we are building our hotels and our benefits for the future, right? A lot of work is going into, how do we make Hilton Honors, the best loyalty program for the next 3 to 5 years? Because, I think loyalty and making sure that you really engage and really understand like what drives people to connect with you and connect with you directly, is going to be, another prong to really handle the cookieless world. So the more consumers come to you directly, the less you have to worry about cookies.
Right.
So not an easy answer.
First party data. First party data. Right?
Yes, because I think Jackie and Sonia would know one of the great presentations or topics of the ROC conference was on digital advertising and the cookieless world, and how partly loyalty is one way of understanding that. But if you pull back even on a more broad view, it's about first-party data, second-party data, and third-party data. And how do you transform a third-party data into first-party? So one of the tools could be loyalty, but it's really capturing and becoming, whether it's a subscriber or someone who directly engages with your website, but they might not be a loyalty member, but how do you even excite them about your website so they come back? And it's a very interesting space now in terms of, it's not just about loyalty, it's about, okay, first party, second party, third party data, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and one of the main things is everyone's got to change something, right? You can't ignore it.
It's a time of change. Yes,
you're all going to have to change something in the way you do your marketing.
And just one more question, Ivy, just for everyone out there. If you said, I think you mentioned a really interesting point, and I know you covered it, but to recap, you said it all starts with mindset. So can you just recap briefly, what is the mindset? If you were to summarize it in an elevator kind of pitch, what right mindset to approach this topic?
Yeah, I think it's about being open to insights from everywhere, right? So I think for me, that would be, if I can give you sort of just one thing that you can remember from all of this, is be open and be flexible about where you're getting data. I think I heard this really great quote from somebody at Hilton. It says that our industry is very data rich, but insights poor.
Yes.
And so,
how do we summed up?
Yeah.
So how do we, kind of, yes, we look at the traditional sources where we get pricing data and market share data and customer satisfaction data, but how do we start to really be more open and how to be more flexible and I think kind of not get too stuck on which comes where, right? I think being able to look holistically, being able to say, there are multiple sources, it's not just one, I think is probably the mindset that I want people to have more often, because I think with that mindset, I think we are then much more open to interacting with customers directly, looking at customer information and customer feedback in different ways. And it allows us to put ourselves in our customers' shoes or beds, in this case, much more, much more easily. So, and I think that then provides the deeper connection, the deeper insights that we're looking for.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you.
Right.
And thank you so much for coming again and doing your presentation again. Like I said, I think everyone who sees it learns something new every time, because it is a diverse topic and there's some depth to it. But that's why if you can pull out to simplicity, it is about mindset, and it's about that flexibility of mindset and how you approach something and allowing data to lead decisions, right, at the end of the day. Thank you so much, Ivy. If no one's got any more questions, we'll wrap up. We're about a couple more minutes to go, and we'll just run through a couple more topics.
Oh, I had a question actually.
Oh, okay.
So,
yes.
So Ivy, a very, very interesting conversation. I would say it was very much eye-opening. Now, my question is on the sources, of the data. Of course, you can utilize where you capture data into whatever trends and insights you get. But I've heard stories like some hotels use the Wi-Fi usage of the guests to capture. I don't know whether it's allowed or not, but they do, where he's hooking up from, and that also gives them an insight into what their preferences are. Social chatter, as you mentioned, and all these end up putting up a picture of a client. But then what is the right way, and where is the right way to capture this data within the hotel premises? When you pick up things from social chatter, is it really legal? I mean, can you really use it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and definitely only use legal sources. Do not get customer data through I think, and I've worked in tech in the past and worked for tech clients, and I think the number one thing in terms of data sharing is it's about consent, right? And I think you're seeing that a lot from what's happening with kind of data sharing at the moment. So I don't think the tech industry as a whole, or even marketing or brands as a whole, have done a good job of really showing value to the customer as to why you're giving up your data, right? But I've done research in the past where if you show value to the customer in the moment, so if you think about going to a hotel and they're asking you for your phone number, if they ask you for your phone number without context, they're like, why am I giving you my phone number? But if you say, oh, we need to give you your phone number because that's how we're going to tell you, the menu in the in for room service that's changing every day. This is how we let you know when your housekeeper is going to come clean your room. This is how we're going to give you additional information about the hotel and the stay. You're much more likely to share that information, right? So for me, I think how you capture data, no matter what platform or how tech solution you're using to implement across your hotels, make sure that you are asking the customer to give it up, but also reinforcing what it's being used for. If you do that, you get rid of 90% of the kind of pushback, and people are much more willing to share the data. This is why you see that typically not just in travel but across the industries, different industries, people are much more willing to give their personal information to the hotel themselves, right? They'll give their preferences, they'll give their bed types, they'll give how many people they have in their household. But if you ask them at a brand level or a company level, they may not be willing to do that, but they get why the hotel wants. So I think for you or working with customer data or want more customer data, reinforcing the value at the moment that you're asking for it is a way that you can circumvent some of their concerns, but also this is how you start to build trust and willingness to share that data, and how you build that first party data capability, right? So that would be my advice is regardless of what platform, make sure the consent, make sure the disclosures are worded well, and I would highly recommend that you don't that you make it simple upfront, and you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to share.
Right. Oh, sure. Thank you.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, this makes sense. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ivy. It's always such a pleasure, and I hope to see you on the another event. We'll always invite you back, and we'll continue to learn from you as you explain it so clearly, and it's a great pleasure to listen to your sessions. Okay, we're a couple of minutes away. We'll move on. We're just going to wrap up now with a couple of housekeeping items. Okay, basically, from Rock Singapore, we couldn't include everything on the Rock at Work. We just include the ones that we thought would be really interactive with the audiences. So if you want to see the rest of the presentations that were made in Singapore, and there were some fantastic ones on automation, defining trends in travel, focus from revenue to commercial. There was a lot going on. You can find it all on our HSMAI-Rock Haze Summit website. And also on that site, you can also get the recordings from these webinars and today's webinar. So go there if you want to find more interesting content. Now, in 2 weeks' time, on the 10th of August, our final Rock at Work webinar will be with Dr. Basak on attribute-based pricing. And we're all looking forward to this one because it's a big topic and it's part of the future of the industry is going to operate around attribute-based pricing. And Dr. Basak is an amazing presenter, and her presentation is excellent in understanding that topic. So we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time on the 10th of August. And of course, you can follow us on our social platforms or contact us directly on the details on your screen. So please feel free to reach out at any time. We're always open to chatting. And if you're interested in joining as a member, as you said, we're an association. So, membership has its privileges, and we have lots of exciting stuff in store for our members. So please just visit hsmaiasia.org and follow the steps and reach out to us and ask questions. We're always happy to chat. Other than that, thank you for your time today. And thank you again to Ivy. It was, I've got a fascination with your presentations. I love them. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time on the 10th of August. Okay, bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Ivy.